The Third World War breaks out in the future world. The whole Earth is reduced to a nuclear, devastated wasteland. Only a small number of people survived by hiding in the space station. This situation continued for hundreds of years. The surviving people gradually developed a new society in the Ark space station, and the population reached 4,000. But the space station simply couldn't support such a large population, so they had to put a birth control plan in place. A family could have at most one child. Even so, the population was still very large, so they had to find another way. At this point, people put forward two plans. The first was to send people to explore the Earth. If it was possible to live there normally, everyone would be happy. Second, if the Earth was still uninhabitable, they would use population control to wipe out some of the people. Against this background, the 100 Project was launched. They would select 100 juvenile offenders from prison and send them to Earth to explore the environment. This would figure out if they needed to go through with a population purge. The girl Clark was one of the selected. Later, all project members were equipped with a bracelet that could monitor their vital signs. When Clark woke up again, she was already on the project's spaceship. A black man spoke up to care about Clark. This man was Wells, the son of the Ark's Chief Justice and Clark's childhood sweetheart, but for some reason, Clark seemed to hate Wells very much. Not long after, the spaceship they were on got into the Earth's atmosphere. One of the men, named Finn, perhaps out of excitement, actually unbuckled his seatbelt. Seeing that he was fine, two other companions followed Finn's example and unbuckled their seatbelts. At this point, an accident suddenly happened. The spacecraft cabin suddenly deployed the parachute. Without the protection of seatbelts, the two imitators were right away thrown out and killed on the spot. Finn was actually unharmed. After that turbulence, the spacecraft cabin finally landed on the ground with great difficulty. The exploration team, with only 98 people left, finally set foot on this land that they had only heard of in rumors. To their surprise, the air was very fresh. The surrounding vegetation was lush, with no signs of a radioactive wasteland. But before they could be happy, they found that the landing site was vastly different from the originally planned location. They planned to land on Mount Weather, which was once a human base. It also stored a lot of survival supplies. It was enough for them to consume for at least several years. But now they landed in a desolate place. Everything had to be obtained through hard work, so everyone decided to head for Mount Weather right away. But at this time, a new problem was placed in front of everyone. It was very far from here to Mount Weather. There might be countless dangers along the way. It would be best if someone went ahead to explore the way. To ensure the safety of those behind, the selection of this pathfinder became a big problem. After all, no one was willing to take the initiative to die. At this point, a man named Bellamy among the members suddenly stood up and said,
"You two go. Find it for us. Let the privileged do the hard work."
This decision was quickly agreed upon by most people present, because basically, they were all sentenced and imprisoned by the Chief Justice. Therefore, they were very hostile to Wells. As for Clark, not only because she was Wells' childhood sweetheart, but also because Clark's mother, Abby, was one of the highest counselors on the Ark, and had joined in the decision of the 100 Project, so Clark was also hostile to by everyone. On the other hand, Abby didn't know that her daughter was in danger. Because of her identity, she was observing the data on the computer. Not long ago, the monitoring bracelets of two members suddenly lost their signals. The system confirmed that the two were dead. Abby felt very suspicious, but the temporary commander Kane beside her thought that it was because the environment on Earth was very harsh and not suitable for human survival at all, thus causing the two children to die quickly. Because Wells had a leg injury, he was finally exempted from being a pathfinder, but Clark, unluckily, went deep into the dangerous jungle with several other members. Before they had gone far, Clark and the others found something wrong. There was a terrifying-looking fawn not far away. This once again reminded everyone of how terrifying a nuclear wasteland the peaceful forest used to be. Clark and the others walked a little further along the forest. Suddenly, they saw a big river lying in front of them. As people who had lived in the space station since childhood, they had never seen such a spectacular scene. A girl named Via even jumped into the water. Luckily, another man named Jasper jumped into the water in time to save her. Otherwise, Via would probably have become a feast for the big fish. At the same time, on the Ark space station, Abby was conducting a surgery. The patient was none other than the Ark's Chief Justice. The Chief Justice had been attacked not long before. Now his life was in critical condition. The culprit was Bellamy, who had been exiled. It was precisely because the Chief Justice was suddenly attacked that the command of the 100 Project was temporarily handed over to Kane, so the decision-making power for the population purge also fell into Kane's hands. A subordinate persuaded Kane to hurry up and implement the population purge, but for such a major matter, involving the lives of hundreds of people, even if Kane thought the Earth was still full of dangers, he dared not make a decision easily. At this time, Bellamy joined forces with several other members, who were also dissatisfied with the Ark to form a small group. Then they kept brainwashing others, demanding that they all take off their bracelets, so that the Ark would think they were all dead here. At that time, everyone would start a new life. Faced with Bellamy's delusion, many people agreed and took off their bracelets in various ways. Only Wells refused. Seeing that Wells dared to contradict him, Bellamy led his companions to force open Wells' bracelet right away, forcing him to join them. The situation on Earth was soon discovered by Abby. It was obviously not a normal phenomenon for a large number of members to lose contact quickly. Abby thought there must be something wrong, but the temporary commander Kane still insisted that it was caused by the environment on Earth. Later, he ordered Abby to be controlled, on the charge of using more blood bags than specified, when treating the Chief Justice, and planned to execute her, just as those people were about to carry out the execution. The awakened Chief Justice arrived in time, and pardoned Abby on the spot. On the other side, Via, who had been injured by the big fish, set off again with the team to find Mount Weather. After simple treatment, soon they met with another river. Because of Via's previous experience, people chose to cross the river by swinging on vines. Jasper was the first to reach the riverbank, and found an old sign on the ground. What was written on the sign was exactly Mount Weather, but at this point, an accident happened again. The companions on the other side of the river hurriedly looked for cover to take shelter. They only poked their heads out again to check on Jasper's situation. After confirming there was no danger, everyone found that Jasper had actually disappeared on the spaceship at the same time, as more and more children kept losing signal. So Kane urged the Chief Justice to carry out the population purge, but Abby held an opposing view. She thought there was something fishy about it, and that a decision could only be made after an investigation. The two sides were locked in a dispute. On the other side, the 100 team on Earth also got involved in a dispute. Because Wells had been resisting all the time, he was naturally isolated by the members led by Bellamy. Just at this point, Wells accidentally got into an argument with a man named Murphy. This man was Bellamy's underling. He seized the opportunity to challenge Wells right away, demanding that the two duel. This was naturally unfair to Wells, who had a leg injury. Seeing that the situation was about to head in an irreversible direction, Clark and others suddenly came back and told everyone about Jasper's situation. They inferred that there were some indigenous forces living on Earth, and hoped that everyone could work together to rescue Jasper. Bellamy was somewhat resistant to Clark's proposal.
I'm here for you.
Clark, what are you doing?
I hear you have a gun.
So encouraged by Clark, Bellamy not only agreed to send people to look for Jasper, but also personally joined the Vanguard team to take the lead in searching for him. Before leaving, he entrusted a subordinate to take good care of Via. It turned out that she was actually Bellamy's younger sister. It didn't take long for the search team to arrive at the river where Jasper was attacked earlier. Through the traces left at the scene, they had a rough direction. The team kept moving forward along the bloodstains, and after an unknown period of time, they finally found Jasper. He wasn't only injured but also tied to a big tree. If the search team hadn't arrived in time, Jasper would probably have lost his life soon. The members of the team quickly rescued him. They went back to the spaceship cabin camp right away, before the Earth's aborigines found them. Unexpectedly, another accident happened. A Black Panther attacked them. Luckily, everyone reacted quickly and successfully killed the Black Panther. But there was food for tonight on the Ark spaceship. Because Abby and Kane were stuck in a stalemate, in the end, they decided to hold a Supreme Council to decide the fate of hundreds of people by voting. Kane was well prepared for this. Therefore, 2 Supreme Councilors echoed Kane's proposal, and Abby also had her own supporters. 2 Supreme Councilors also supported her. Now the most crucial vote fell on the Ark's Chief Justice. To everyone's surprise, the Chief Justice chose to abstain. In the end, it was decided to observe for another 10 days. If they still couldn't get news of Earth's safety, they would have to implement the population purge. Abby wasn't very satisfied with the result of the meeting. After she left, she found a mechanic named Raven. She asked the other person to repair the damaged escape pod within 9 days. Preparing to go to Earth to check in person, Raven put forward a condition for this. She asked to go to Earth with her. It turned out that Finn was Raven's boyfriend. She missed her lover so much. After getting Abby's permission, Raven got down to the repair work right away. In the late-night camp, Charlotte, the youngest girl, suddenly woke up from a nightmare. She dreamed again of the nightmare, where her parents were exiled into space. Clark came to her side to comfort her softly, encouraging Charlotte to regard Earth as her new home, and start a new life. Later, Clark used the medical knowledge she learned from her mother to treat Jasper's wounds, but due to the lack of painkillers, the pain caused Jasper to pass out. During this period, Clark accidentally discovered that a kind of herb had antibiotic effects. Wells recognized that this was an organism called algae, so Clark, Wells, and Finn went out together to look for algae. After some searching, they found algae by a river. But at this point, a large flock of birds suddenly flew out of the forest. Then the sound of Horns came from the air. Before everyone could figure out what was happening, they saw a yellow acid fog sweeping over. From a distance like a tide, the three hurriedly ran back, and finally hid in an underground shelter. Just as the acid fog was about to catch up with them, on the other side, Bellamy was hunting in the wild with his subordinate. Charlotte followed. She couldn't stand Jasper's wailing, so she chose to follow. At this very point, they also saw the spreading acid fog. Bellamy hurriedly took Charlotte to hide in a cave, but his subordinate unluckily tripped over a tree trunk and fell to the ground. Before he could get up, he was immediately swallowed by the acid fog. Night fell. Charlotte woke up from a nightmare again. She still had lingering fears about what she had just seen. Bellamy noticed that something was wrong with Charlotte, so he gave her a delicate knife.
You hold tight to that knife and you say, "Screw you."
At the same time, Clark and the others trapped in the shelter found that there were quite a lot of supplies here. They opened a dusty bottle of wine and celebrated their survival through the disaster under the cover of night. Gradually, Clark got a little drunk and finally spoke about the conflict between her and Wells. It turned out that Wells had caused the death of Clark's father. Clark's father was once the top engineer on the Ark. It was he who discovered the crisis of insufficient resource supply on the Ark. He had planned to make the truth public, but was stopped by his wife Abby. Clark happened to overhear their argument. Clark had no idea what to do. She shared the secret with Wells, hoping that he could help find a way. But just as Clark's father was about to record a video to expose the truth, the Ark's security team suddenly rushed into the room and arrested her father in front of Clark and exiled him into the vastness of space. Clark thought that Wells must have betrayed them. Since then, their relationship had completely broken down. Perhaps stimulated by the past again, Wells drowned his sorrows in wine, indulging alone in pain and helplessness. Because there was actually another hidden story behind this matter. The next morning, the acid fog dispersed. The three of Clark set off on their journey back again. The next second, a sharp scream cut through the silent air. The three cautiously went over to check and found that it was Charlotte with a face full of fear. Next to her was a bloody human-shaped figure. It was exactly the subordinate who was caught in the acid fog yesterday. He was at death's door and in great pain at this point. Clark had to use a knife to end his endless suffering. Not long after, they went back to the camp with the subordinate's body, only to learn another worrying thing. A murder almost happened in the camp last night. Jasper's wailing aroused Murphy's murderous intent. Luckily, their companions found out in time and stopped it. This made Bellamy, who regarded himself as the leader, fly into a rage. Infighting was absolutely not allowed. He severely reprimanded his subordinate Murphy, thus sowing the seeds of disaster. Clark boarded the spaceship cabin right away after coming back. She gave Jasper medicine made from algae to relieve his pain. Then Clark found Wells, hoping to get the truth from him. A while ago, Finn's words made Clark realize that there might be another hidden reason for her father's death. Maybe the one who informed on him wasn't Wells, but her own mother. Up to now, Wells had no choice but to tell the truth. Learning that the culprit was really her own mother, Clark's heart was filled with mixed emotions.
I wanted
To protect me.
At this point, the two finally let go of their past grievances. After many years, they hugged each other tightly again, but they never thought that this would be their last conversation. Early the next morning, Clark and others were horrified to find that Wells had been brutally murdered. Clark, who had just resolved the misunderstanding, was filled with endless sorrow and anger. Her resentment towards her mother also grew deeper. The flame of revenge burned fiercely in her heart. She resolutely removed her bracelet, but instead of discarding it, she handed it to Monty. She asked him to try to get in touch with the Ark and tell them that it was possible to survive here. Thanks to Clark's unremitting efforts, Jasper finally gradually returned to normal. Via accompanied him in rehabilitation training in the forest, but they accidentally found Wells' missing finger and a lost dagger. The two brought these items back to the camp. Clark carefully examined the dagger and found that it was made of the spaceship's metal. This meant that the murderer was among them. What was even more shocking was that Murphy's name was clearly engraved on the back of the dagger. At this point, Clark's mind was immediately filled with anger. She questioned Murphy why he killed Wells, but no matter how Clark pressed, Murphy insisted that he was innocent. No one present believed Murphy, because since he came to Earth, he had completely unleashed his evil nature and repeatedly bullied other members. Those who were dissatisfied with him took the opportunity to demand that Murphy be exiled. Seeing that the situation was about to get completely out of control, Murphy prepared to use force to maintain his position, but unluckily, he was pinned to the ground by a group of people and beaten black and blue. Then everyone hung Murphy up and forced Bellamy to punish him. Although Murphy used to be his underling, now, under the pressure of the situation, Bellamy had to calm the public anger. He kicked away the stool under Murphy's feet, intending to hang him alive. In the nick of time when his life was hanging by a thread, Charlotte suddenly stood up.
I did!
Everyone was immediately shocked by her words. Then, according to what Charlotte said, yesterday, he saw with his own eyes that Clark ended the subordinate's suffering. To overcome her inner demons, she killed Wells, the son of the Chief Justice. After learning the truth, Clark hurriedly saved Murphy, but having narrowly escaped being hanged, Murphy would not let it go. He insisted on punishing Charlotte, but he didn't expect that. Those people would abandon the previous principle of a life for a life, and insist on keeping the little girl. Even Bellamy didn't stand up for him. Seeing this, Murphy made up his mind completely. He attacked Bellamy on the spot, then Murphy, along with his followers, seized weapons and wanted to kill Charlotte himself. Clark and Finn protected Charlotte right away and hid in the forest, but they were still caught up by Murphy and others, and forced to the edge of a cliff. Murphy took Clark hostage. Charlotte didn't want to continue to drag Clark into trouble because of herself, so she resolutely jumped off the cliff. Everyone blamed Charlotte's death on Murphy, and exiled him on this ground. Because Clark took off her bracelet, her signal was completely cut off. Abby was burning with anxiety, and found Raven to urge her to speed up right away, but she learned that an important part was still needed to repair the escape pod. To help Raven repair it faster, Abby risked smuggling medical contraband, but she didn't expect that this was a trap set by the other person. The Ark's security team quickly came to arrest Abby. Luckily, Raven had already repaired the escape pod by this time. Seeing Abby arrested, she had to board the escape pod alone and head for Earth. At this time, the Ark showed that all the children had died. Kane concluded that the 100 project had failed. To save the people on the ship, a downsizing plan must be implemented right away. The Chief Justice reluctantly agreed. Hundreds of people would be executed in 12 hours, as a scarce doctor on the Ark. Although Abby violated the regulations, she wasn't on the elimination list. She was even released to continue working, because the number of patients increased. In the late-night sky above Earth, the escape pod streaked across the sky like a meteor. This scene was witnessed by Clark and Finn, who were lingering in the woods. In addition, some people in the camp naturally also noticed it. Bellamy was worried that people from the Ark would come after learning that Earth was safe. At that time, he would definitely be dealt with by them, so he lied that for safety reasons, everyone should stay in the camp. They would look for the escape pod tomorrow. In fact, he took advantage of the night to go to the landing site of the escape pod alone quietly. When Clark and the other went back to the camp, they found that Bellamy was gone. Coupled with his previous words, the two realized that something was wrong right away, so they quickly set off to find the escape pod. On the other side, Bellamy was stopped by Via. It turned out that his sister also noticed Bellamy's abnormality. That's why she chased after him all the way. She questioned Bellamy why he did this. Bellamy had no choice but to confess that he was hired to assassinate the Chief Justice, so that he could accompany his sister to Earth. Only then could he sneak into the spaceship cabin. Now all he wanted to do was prevent being dealt with by people from the Ark. Later, Via was shocked after learning the truth, and turned to leave with complicated feelings, but she accidentally fell down the hillside on the way. Bellamy didn't chase after his sister, but continued to look for the escape pod. After an unknown period of time, he finally arrived at the location of the escape pod. Looking at the unconscious Raven, Bellamy didn't kill her. Instead, he threw the radio in the cabin into the water. This could also prevent them from contacting the Ark. Raven was woken up only after Clark and the others arrived. When she saw her boyfriend Finn coming, she rushed up excitedly right away. Looking at their intimate appearance, Clark immediately understood everything. For the harmony in the camp, she resolutely chose to hide this feeling, as if it had never happened. Later, they learned from Raven that the Ark, thinking the plan had failed, was preparing to implement the population purge. They realized that they must inform the Ark right away that Earth was safe. But the radio had been thrown into the river by Bellamy. They had to first force the whereabouts of the radio out of the other person to contact the Ark. At the same time, the Chief Justice was discussing with Kane how to implement the downsizing plan. According to Kane's plan, he planned to disguise this matter as an accident. But the Chief Justice couldn't agree. He couldn't bear to execute it personally. So he decided to hand over the position of leader to Kane. Abby still held opposing views. She released the video recorded by her husband before his death, hoping that people would sacrifice voluntarily. After learning this news, many people were willing to die voluntarily for their families. The number even exceeded the expectations of the downsizing plan. This made the Chief Justice see the most sincere emotions of human beings, and also made Kane realize his mistake. He gave the position of leader back to the Chief Justice. On Earth, Clark and others finally found Bellamy. Under their constant questioning, Bellamy took them to find the radio, but the equipment was severely waterlogged, and would take several days to repair. At this time, Raven thought of a way, send a message to the Ark by launching signal flares. So that night, all the children gathered together to launch signal flares into the sky, but they were still one step too late. Hundreds of Volunteers sacrificed themselves voluntarily. Those meteors were their final brilliance. Raven attributed all the faults to Bellamy, but now wasn't the time for infighting. If they didn't inform the Ark as soon as possible, more people would die. To fix the radio, she remembered the underground shelter she and Finn had discovered earlier, so she decided to take Raven there to look for usable parts. At this point, Bellamy also found that his sister was missing, and took a few brothers into the forest to search right away, but they found nothing, because by this time, Via had been rescued by an Earth native. When Via woke up from her slumber, she found herself in a dark cave. Via was worried that staying here would lead to misfortune, so she struggled to climb out of the cave. Bellamy still hadn't found Via. The group had been searching all night and looked very tired. At this point, an accident suddenly happened.
Wandering around aimlessly.
One of the companions was killed on the spot by an Earth native. What's even more terrifying was that those Earth natives were perfectly integrated into the jungle. They might be just around the corner, yet they couldn't be detected. Fear surged in their hearts like a tide. Several people turned around and ran. But the more flustered they were, the more dangerous it became. A few more companions met a tragic end. Such losses made Bellamy burn with anger. He decided to take the initiative to attack right away. Moreover, Bellamy had a guess. Maybe they could find out the whereabouts of his sister from them. The sound of the battle between the two sides attracted Via, who had escaped from the cave. Just as she was about to head over there, she was suddenly attacked by an Earth native. Via thought the other person was coming to harm her, so she struggled violently, but the next second, she saw a little girl get shot through the chest, with an arrow right in front of her. Only then did Via realize that the native was protecting her. Later, Via was taken back to the cave by the Earth native, and tied up with an iron chain. At the same time, Clark had already taken Raven to the underground shelter, and found the urgently needed supplies. At this point, Raven found a small metal deer. This belonged to Finn. Combined with her boyfriend's abnormal behavior before, she vaguely guessed that something might have happened between Clark and Finn. After going back to the residence, Raven asked Clark the doubts in her heart. Seeing that things had been exposed, Clark also frankly admitted everything. After some explanation, Clark fled the tent, leaving Raven alone in silence. In the forest, Bellamy and others were waiting for the arrival of the Earth natives, ready to fight to the death with them. Jasper shouted loudly around. The natives hiding in the jungle came out from their hiding places, one after another. Facing the approaching enemies, Bellamy and others were ready to burn their boats and fight to the end. But suddenly, a loud horn sound was heard. Then the Earth natives panicked and scattered. Combined with previous experiences, Bellamy guessed that this might be a signal that acid fog was coming, so he quickly led his teammates to hide. But after waiting for a long time, there was still no sign of acid fog. Several people carefully went out to check, and happened to meet the Earth native who was blowing the horn. They quietly followed, and tracked all the way to the cave where the natives were hiding. When Via saw the Earth native return, she knocked him out with the iron chain while he wasn't looking. Then she quickly picked up the key on the ground, and unlocked the restraints. As soon as she ran out of the cave, she happened to meet Bellamy and others. From his sister's words, Bellamy learned what had happened. He wanted to kill this Earth native right away. Bellamy would never allow any act that harmed his sister. More than 10 years ago, their mother risked being executed to give birth to their sister Via. To prevent her from being discovered, Via had to live hiding under the floor. It lasted for more than 10 years, until the day Via became an adult. Bellamy took her to a masquerade ball, but unluckily, they were discovered by the Ark. Their mother was exiled because of this. At this point, Shumway, the spaceship commander, found Bellamy and asked him to assassinate the chief justice. He also promised to arrange for Bellamy to board the spaceship cabin for the 100 project at that time. Of course, this matter had always been deeply buried in Bellamy's heart. Even Via knew nothing about it, but Bellamy never thought that this matter would be exposed because of this Earth native. Seeing that Bellamy was about to kill the native, Via suddenly stood up and stopped him. Only then did Bellamy know that this native had saved his sister's life after she fell from the mountain, and took care of Via many times afterwards. Although she didn't know the other person, she had a feeling that native was definitely not a bad person. At that very point, Finn, who was traveling with them, also spoke up to support Via. In a sense, this Earth native who blew the horn was their savior. At this point, the unconscious native suddenly woke up. Bellamy and the others knocked the native unconscious right away, and took control of him. Then they took him back to the camp, along with the seriously injured Finn. Seeing the badly wounded Finn, Clark felt very anxious but could only sigh helplessly. For such a serious injury, only her mother could provide treatment. So now, all hopes of saving Finn rested on Raven. If she couldn't fix the radio in time, Finn would have only one way to go, death. Luckily, after unremitting efforts, Raven finally repaired the radio and successfully made contact with the Ark. Hearing her daughters Voice coming from the device, Abby's hanging heart finally settled. Later, Clark told them the news, that there were still survivors on Earth and that Wells had passed away. Although the Chief Justice was very distressed by this, he had to accept the fact. He asked Abby to do her best to help Clark treat the patients. This way, Abby began to remotely direct Clark in treating Finn. Luckily, the Earth natives' attack didn't pierce Finn's pleura, so the treatment was relatively smooth. Coupled with Abby's guidance, it didn't take long for Clark to successfully pull out the dagger stuck in Finn's chest. After that, as long as the wound was stitched up and infection was prevented, he would recover. But for some reason, Finn suddenly developed symptoms such as a fever, and it wasn't caused by an infection. Through investigation, it was found that the Earth native's weapon contained a deadly poison, so everyone found the imprisoned native right away. Bellamy tortured him severely, forcing him to hand over the antidote, while Via kept trying to persuade the native to hand over the antidote, but it didn't work. The Earth native was soon tortured beyond recognition, but still didn't speak. At this time, everyone found a box in his clothes. It contained several cans of potion and a small notebook. When Bellamy opened the small notebook, the native reacted very excitedly. When they turned to the last page, they found that it was a portrait of Via. Bellamy seemed to understand something. Clark held the poisonous dagger against the native, trying to force him to hand over the antidote, but the native remained silent all the time. Everyone knew that the antidote was in the box, but they couldn't confirm which one was the real antidote. Just as Bellamy was about to continue using force to interrogate, Via suddenly thought of a way. She even bet her own life, cutting her arm with a dagger. The next second, the Earth native really got excited. Obviously, he had a special affection for Via, and resolutely told them about the antidote. Finally, at the last second, Clark successfully gave the antidote to Finn. After everyone left, Via quietly came to the native and wiped his wounds. The native was stunned for a moment, then thanked Via in English, and revealed that his name was Lincoln. On the Ark, former Judge Diana suddenly came to the Chief Justice. Diana revealed that, because the Chief Justice had allowed Kane's decision before, many people were deeply dissatisfied with him, and this emotion was spreading among the crowd. If it wasn't dealt with in time, there might be a riot on the Ark. Then Diana said she was willing to assist the Chief Justice in calming everyone's emotions. The Chief Justice agreed without thinking much, not knowing that he had fallen into Diana's conspiracy. When they came to the hall, they just saw a group of people surrounding Kane. They were very angry with this murderer, who caused the separation of families. In addition, there was a man in the crowd who kept intensifying the conflict. A riot was imminent. Luckily, the Chief Justice and others appeared in time to curb the deterioration of the situation. Later, he announced to everyone that the Earth was already habitable, trying to distract their attention with this news. But the man who had been fanning the flames had a very clear goal and still refused to let go. The Chief Justice once again said that he fully understood their feelings. Then the Chief Justice revealed the sad news that his own son had also died. At this very second, Diana also hurriedly stood up to appease the people. With her prestige, she managed to calm everyone's anger. Earlier, Abby had been stripped of her status as a Supreme Counselor because of smuggling, so the Chief Justice appointed Diana as the new counselor. But he didn't know that this disturbance was a conspiracy planned by Diana from the very beginning. Its purpose was precisely to return to the top decision-making level of the Ark. The unrest in the Ark made the Chief Justice decide to launch the project of returning to Earth in advance, so he held a video conference with Clark and others right away. After confirming that there was no nuclear radiation pollution on Earth, the Chief Justice ordered the launch of the return plan right away. But then a new problem arose. The current escape pods could only hold more than 700 people, but there were more than 2,000 people on the Ark. The issue of the order of departure still needed to be discussed in the long run. At this time, the situation on Earth was also very bad, because the cold winter was approaching. How to get through the winter became an urgent problem. Kane informed Clark that there was a rescue station not far from the camp. The supplies and equipment there were enough to help them get through the severe winter. After the video conference, the Chief Justice asked everyone to leave, leaving only Clark. He said right away,
"Please, Clark, no time for you and Abby to sit down."
Clark's heart was very complicated towards the person who killed her father. She also didn't know how to face it, and finally just left the tent in silence. Later, everyone took turns to talk with their families on the Ark. When it was the boy Dax's turn, it was Commander Shumway's face that appeared on the screen. From their conversation, it can be learned that Shumway held Dax's mother hostage and forced him to get rid of Bellamy. After all, if Bellamy was still alive when everyone from the Ark came to Earth, then Shumway's plot to assassinate the Chief Justice would inevitably be exposed. Because of this, faced with Shumway's threat, Dax had to agree. Bellamy was still unaware of this. He was heading to the rescue station with Clark to search for supplies, and Dax was following behind with a dagger. Soon Clark and Bellamy found the rescue station and discovered a large number of firearms there. Bellamy taught Clark how to use them on the spot. At this point, Clark noticed Bellamy's abnormality. He packed a lot of supplies in his backpack.
Bellamy, what's going on? You've been acting weird all day.
Bellamy frankly admitted his escape plan. He believed that once people from the Ark landed on Earth, only death would await him, so it would be better to leave in advance now. Perhaps there would still be a glimmer of hope. While the two were talking, a huge change was unfolding in the camp. Not long before, Jasper suddenly told Vea he found that there were many Earth natives near the camp, but strangely, no matter how Vea checked, she never saw any sign of the natives. At this time, Vea noticed that Jasper was constantly eating a kind of nut. She realized that this kind of nut might be causing Jasper's current mental confusion, but instead of stopping him, Vea asked Jasper for many nuts, and gave them to other companions to eat. It turned out that after the previous events, Vea had been wanting to rescue Lincoln. Now was the perfect opportunity. Under the effect of the nuts, the prison guard soon became disoriented. Not just him, everyone in the camp became confused due to eating the nuts. Vea took this opportunity to set Lincoln free. In addition to the people in the camp, Clark and the others also took the nuts given by Vea before setting off, so they were now also in a state of mental confusion. While practicing shooting, Clark was shocked to find that her deceased father appeared in front of her, and what Bellamy saw in his illusion was the injured Chief Justice. It was obvious that he had been brooding over the assassination. In the illusion, the Chief Justice kept accusing Bellamy, believing that he was irreparably responsible for the death of the volunteers on the Ark. For a moment, guilt flooded Bellamy's heart like a tide. He even begged the Chief Justice to kill him to atone for his sins. But just then, the effect of the nuts suddenly wore off. Bellamy then realized that Dax was pointing a gun at him. Luckily, the first shot was a dud, but it was this brief delay that led Clark to notice something was wrong. She pointed her gun at Dax right away, and told him not to make a move. Dax tried to persuade Clark not to interfere. His target was only Bellamy. Faced with Dax's abnormal behavior, the two tentatively asked him why he was doing this. From this, they learned that all this was actually arranged by Shumway. While the two were talking, Dax suddenly launched an attack. Luckily, Clark reacted quickly and successfully avoided the attack. Bellamy seized the opportunity to pow Dax to the ground, and then killed him. After this incident, Bellamy decided to stay and kill Shumway. That night, they brought all the supplies back to the camp, and began to train everyone to use firearms. During this time, Bellamy learned that Vea had set Lincoln free, but considering that she was his own sister, Bellamy had no choice but to forgive her, and took this opportunity to truly understand his sister's inner thoughts. Later, with Clark's help, he had a video call with the Chief Justice. Bellamy identified right away that the assassination attempt on the Chief Justice was instigated by Shumway. Now he had reformed and hoped to continue contributing to the construction of the Ark. Seeing Bellamy's sincerity, the Chief Justice pardoned his crimes right away, and sent someone to arrest Shumway immediately. But the Chief Justice didn't know that Shumway was just a pawn of the mastermind behind the scenes. After he was imprisoned, the real mastermind, Diana, finally emerged. Shumway thought that she had come to save him. Unexpectedly, Diana had come to silence him. To avoid arousing the Chief Justice's suspicion, Diana ordered her subordinates to stage the scene, as if Shumway had committed suicide out of guilt. With no more worries, Diana continued to carry out her plan. Not long after, a Unity Day event was held on the Ark. No one expected that a sudden explosion would occur. Many civilians and 3 counselors were killed on the spot. The Chief Justice and Kane survived by luck. They realized right away that this was a premeditated attack. The Chief Justice ordered a thorough investigation to find the culprit. Diana felt that something was wrong when she heard that the main targets were still alive. To prevent her plan from being exposed, she decided to seize the escape pod and fly to Earth first. In the camp, Vea sneaked out while everyone wasn't paying attention. Following the clues left by Lincoln, she arrived at the cave where Lincoln was hiding, but she didn't notice that Finn had followed her. It turned out that he had been keeping an eye on Vea. After seeing Lincoln, Vea explained right away that people from the Ark would soon arrive on Earth. Vea suggested that instead of killing each other in the future, they should sit down and negotiate peacefully now. After a brief thought, Lincoln agreed to this proposal, and they agreed that he would bring his leader to have a detailed talk with them the next day. Finn went back to tell Clark about this right away. He hoped that she would negotiate with them, and emphasized not to carry weapons, but Clark didn't trust the Earth natives at all, so she secretly told Bellamy about this, asking him to hide in the dark the next day to prevent accidents. At the same time, on the Ark, Diana carefully plotted a conspiracy. She found a subordinate to pretend to be the mastermind of the explosion, and told Kane that she had captured the culprit. Just as the other person was going for the interrogation, the prison guards under Diana suddenly launched an attack. They imprisoned Kane and his assistant in the cell. Then Diana took the opportunity to take control of the spaceship's escape pod, but because it wasn't the originally planned time, the escape pod wasn't ready. The electricity in the pod wasn't enough. To support them to reach Earth at all, Diana ordered to draw energy from the Ark right away, to supply the escape pod. This move attracted the attention of the people on the Ark immediately. Because of the sudden massive extraction of energy, chain failures occurred in various devices of the Ark. Without the system to maintain it, the temperature inside the Ark dropped sharply. At this time, the Chief Justice rescued Kane. They hadn't had time to breathe a sigh of relief. When this happened, Kane quickly told the Chief Justice about his imprisonment. Combined with the current situation of the Ark, the Chief Justice finally realized that all this was Diana's conspiracy, so the judge and Kane rushed to the escape pod, but it was too late, and Diana had already closed the hatch. The Chief Justice tried to persuade Diana not to be stubborn, but naturally, it was of no use. Diana resolutely activated the escape pod. The Chief Justice could only watch helplessly, as the escape pod separated from the Ark. Because the escape pod was connected to the Ark's main system, the Ark's power supply was completely cut off. On Earth, Clark went to meet the leader of the natives as scheduled. The other person was a woman named Anna. As soon as she opened her mouth, she accused Clark and others of being intruders. The negotiation reached a deadlock. Right away, at this time, Jasper, who was hiding in the tree, suddenly found that there were other natives lurking not far away. He mistakenly thought that they planned to sabotage the negotiation, so he decided to strike first. Such a reckless move completely broke down the negotiations between the two sides. Anna ordered the execution of Clark and the others right away. Faced with the pursuit of the natives, Clark managed to return to the camp safely, thanks to the cover of Bellamy and Jasper. As night fell, they saw the escape pod flying towards Earth. Everyone thought that reinforcements were coming, but suddenly they found that the escape pod didn't open its parachute, and finally crashed into a nearby mountain. Several people went to the crash site to check right away, but no survivors were found at the scene. Now their conflict with the Earth natives had become more irreconcilable. Everyone could only be constantly vigilant against possible hidden dangers around them, but they unexpectedly found that Murphy, who had long been exiled, was still alive. At this time, he was covered in blood and looked dying. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot during this period. Out of sympathy, everyone took Murphy back to the camp. Later, it was learned that Murphy was captured by the Earth natives, shortly after being exiled. It took a lot of effort to escape from the natives' camp later. This didn't sound like a problem, but shortly after Murphy went back to the camp, Clark and her companions began to show abnormalities.
Crack your eyes.
Clark sensed something was wrong, and went to question Murphy right away. Seeing that things had been exposed, Murphy no longer hid anything. Clark then learned that he didn't escape on his own, but was deliberately released by the Earth natives. In fact, he was already carrying the pathogen left by the natives. To prevent the virus from spreading, everyone quickly isolated all the infected. Now all hopes were pinned on Via. Only she could gain Lincoln's trust, to learn the antidote to this mysterious virus from him. In this way, Via found Lincoln again, but was told that there was no cure for this disease, because it wasn't a poison. According to Lincoln, the body would return to normal in just one day, after taking this drug. But this was a strategy often used by the tribe before battles, so based on previous experience, Lincoln inferred that the tribe would attack Clark and others at dawn. At that time, their physical condition wouldn't have recovered, and they would be completely unable to fight the tribe. Via begged Lincoln to help them fend off the tribe's attack right away. Lincoln could do nothing about it. He was regarded as a traitor by his companions. Because of previous events, now he planned to leave here and join another tribe. At this time, the camp was in chaos because of the mysterious virus. Everyone was in a panic, fearing that they would be the next to be infected. Luckily, at this time, Via returned to the camp and explained the current situation to everyone. Faced with such a situation, Clark suggested that Finn lead the healthy people to escape from here. Otherwise, everyone would be wiped out by the natives. But Finn was unwilling to abandon his companions. At this point, a bold idea suddenly emerged in his mind. Finn told everyone a way to stop the Earth natives' attack.
What are you talking about?
Murphy says he crossed a bridge on his way back here from the...
According to him, the natives must cross a small bridge to reach the camp. Upon hearing this, Raven had an idea right away. There was a large amount of ammonia gas near the crashed escape pod. Once these gases came into contact with an open flame, they would explode violently. It only required arranging someone to blow up the only road at that time. This would greatly delay the natives' attack. This was indeed a good plan. But before that, it was necessary to collect the ammonia gas first. In the end, they assigned this task to Raven, who was quite familiar with ammonia gas. Soon Raven went back to the camp with a large amount of ammonia gas. Bellamy originally planned to carry out this dangerous operation himself, but he was also infected and very weak, unable to escape the explosion at all. In the end, this task was assigned to Jasper. As dawn arrived, when Finn and Jasper were about to set off, they found that Raven had already left with the ammonia gas. She dragged her weak body to place the ammonia gas on the bridge, but before Raven could detonate it, she fainted there. Luckily, Finn and Jasper found the unconscious Raven before the natives arrived. Finn hurriedly took her away, and Jasper, with the assistance of his companion Monty, successfully blew up the bridge. This move bought valuable time for everyone, temporarily delaying the Earth natives' action. Everyone couldn't help but rejoice. But at this point, another accident happened. Murphy, who had been rescued, took advantage of everyone's inattention to kill John, who had advocated expelling him. Then the wooden house where food was stored in the camp suddenly caught fire. The food that everyone had prepared for the winter turned to ashes in an instant. Now everyone had to go out hunting, and they split into several teams. Clark, along with Finn and another man, went to the forest to hunt with spears. But before the three could find any prey, they were attacked by a group of Earth natives. That companion was killed on the spot. Clark and Finn were taken back to the camp by the natives, and brought before Anna. Then she told the two that the reason she had brought them there wasn't to harm them. Instead, she asked Clark to treat the girl on the sickbed. Through communication, they learned that this person was Anna's deputy. She had been seriously injured in the ammonia explosion not long ago. Anna said that if Clark could cure her, she would let the two leave, but if Clark couldn't save her, Finn would have to be buried with her. Upon hearing such terms, Clark could only do her best to treat the girl, but the medical equipment here was very simple, and the girl's wound was already infected. Despite using all kinds of methods, Clark could only watch the girl die. Just as she had said before, Anna ordered her men to take Finn away for execution right away, and Clark was left behind, because Anna and her people were short of doctors. They hoped that Clark would stay and work for them. But Anna had just killed Finn, and Clark regarded her as a mortal enemy, so how could she agree to such a request? So Clark took advantage of the other person's inattention to attack Anna with a scalpel. Then she quickly fled the scene. But this was the natives' territory. Clark hadn't run far when she triggered a trap set by the natives. It wasn't long before she was caught and brought back. Seeing how stubborn Clark was, Anna had to order her execution. Then she handed over the task to one of her subordinates. Just as the subordinate was about to carry it out, beacon fires suddenly lit up in the distance. The natives immediately felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. From their communication, it was learned that this was another native tribe. It was a warning that the Reapers were coming. Anna led her people back to defend the camp right away. She left only one subordinate to execute Clark first, and then returned to defend the camp. But what Anna didn't know was that this person was actually Lincoln, who had infiltrated them. At the same time, the survivors on the Ark gradually woke up. Then they worked together to rescue the Chief Justice and the engineers. One of the engineers said that the escape pod was manually launched from the Ark during its launch. Therefore, there might still be people surviving in the maintenance cabin. After some excavation, they indeed found the unconscious Abby in the maintenance cabin. Since the Ark had little power left, the life support system would shut down in 51 hours. By then, everyone would definitely die. The judge decided to lift the food restrictions and let everyone enjoy themselves to the fullest in their final moments on Earth. Clark watched as the other person hesitated to act, and instead led her into the forest, and there, she saw Finn, who was supposed to have died long ago. At this point, the native also took off his mask. Only then did Clark realize that Lincoln had saved her. Later, through further understanding, she learned that he had also lit the previous bonfire. But now wasn't the time for detailed explanations. The most important thing was to first escape from the tribe's territory. Lincoln took the two of them into a tunnel that led directly outside the camp. According to Lincoln, Reapers often haunted this place. Anna and the others would never dare to chase after them. At this time, Anna also sensed Lincoln's betrayal, but just as he had expected, she didn't dare to chase into the tunnel for fear of the Reapers. On the other side, Murphy in the camp launched another act of revenge. This time, he targeted another person who had advocated his exile, but just as Murphy was about to act, he was discovered by Jasper, and he informed his companions via radio. Seeing that Jasper dared to ruin his plans, Murphy vented all his anger on Jasper right away. He kidnapped him and locked him in the spaceship cabin as a hostage. Seeing that his former subordinate had turned out like this, Bellamy, who regarded himself as the leader, was the first to step forward to take responsibility. Bellamy proposed to exchange himself as a hostage. Murphy had long held a grudge about the exile, so he readily agreed to Bellamy's request. Not long after, Bellamy went into the spaceship. He had wanted to persuade Murphy to mend his ways, but the other person didn't give Bellamy any chance to speak. He just pointed a gun at him, and forced Bellamy to hang himself with the rope nearby. While Murphy and Bellamy were in a stalemate, Raven and Jasper sneaked into the bottom of the spaceship, trying to sneak attack Murphy, but they found that the bottom of the spaceship was filled with ammonia gas, making it impossible to launch an attack from there. Raven could only try to change the circuit to open the hatch. After some attempts, Raven successfully opened the hatch, but by this time, Bellamy was already on the verge of death. The companions rushed in to rescue him. Murphy used a pre-designed bomb to blow open the spaceship's wall and escape right away. On the other side, Clark and the other two met with Reapers while traveling in the tunnel. Lincoln decided to sacrifice himself to attract the Reapers' attention, buying time for the two to escape. With Lincoln's life sacrificing help, Clark and the other person successfully evaded most of the Reapers, but they still met with an attack from a lone Reaper. Luckily, the two had some strength. After a fierce battle, they successfully killed that Reaper. When dawn broke, the two finally went back to the camp and told everyone the news about the Earth natives on the Ark. As his life was about to end, the Chief Justice stared at the videotape of his son when he was a child. Suddenly, from the words of the young Clark, he gained a glimmer of hope for survival. Perhaps the whole Ark could be regarded as a giant escape pod, and its thrusters could be used to send it to Earth. He told everyone this bold idea, and consulted the engineers about the potential risks of this move. He learned that there was a 95% chance of an explosion during the fall. The Chief Justice decisively instructed the engineers to find the 5% safe area. This was their last shot. At the same time, Clark and the others were thinking about how to deal with the Earth natives afterward. Raven had been shot in the abdomen in the previous explosion, and couldn't take part in the battle at all. After thinking for a long time, everyone decided to abandon the camp and look for a new hiding place, but they were attacked by the natives as soon as they set off. Seeing that the enemies had already arrived, everyone had to pick up their weapons and fight to the death. They planned to use the ammonia gas at the bottom of the spaceship as a deadly weapon. After luring the Earth natives into the camp, they would ignite the spaceship to blow them all up. This wasn't a difficult task for Raven. Just as everyone was busy preparing, Finn came up with a better idea. He planned to lure those Reapers to the camp as well, then let the natives on both sides kill each other, and they would be able to evacuate, while taking advantage of the situation. Maybe there would also be a chance to clean up the battlefield. In this way, he and Lincoln lured a large number of Reapers, taking advantage of the fierce battle between the two sides of the natives. Lincoln left with Leah. Although Bellamy saw all this, he recognized Lincoln's character during their interactions, so he decided to let his sister go, and let her start a new life. Not long after, the Reapers were completely killed by Anna and others. Those natives didn't see Clark and the others, so they didn't evacuate. Everyone had to restart the project of blowing up the camp, but at this time, Raven fell into a coma due to severe injuries. The only one they could rely on was Jasper, hoping that he could quickly make the control switch. To buy time, Finn and Bellamy took the initiative to provide cover, but they still failed to stop Anna, causing her to break into the spaceship cabin. Luckily, Jasper had already finished the controller. The next second, the whole camp was engulfed in a sea of fire. All the Earth natives outside were immediately wiped out. It's a pity that Bellamy and Finn were also outside. On the other side, everyone on the Ark went into the calculated 5% safe cabin, one after another. At this time, people found that the activation of the thruster required pressing a button from the console. This means that someone must stay on the Ark to face death. Kane resolutely decided to stay to make up for his previous mistakes, but at this point, the propulsion device started unexpectedly. It turned out that the Chief Justice activated the switch at the last second. He chose to sacrifice himself to save everyone. In the end, Abby and others successfully landed on Earth. After hundreds of years, they finally went back to Earth again. After learning this news, the Chief Justice peacefully waited for the final outcome. In the camp, Clark and others slowly opened the cabin door. What unfolded before their eyes was a messy and tragic scene. Everyone thought that after going through all the hardships, they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But the next second, another accident happened. Anna recognized right away that this was a native tribe called the Mountain Men, but before she could elaborate, everyone fainted to the ground. When Clark struggled to open her eyes again, she found herself in a room full of futuristic technology. Clark struggled to prop herself up, and peeked out. Through the window on the door, a sign at the end of the corridor was clearly visible, which read Mount Weather Isolation Room. The film ends here. The first season of The 100 was released in March 2014. The theme was very innovative at that time. The portrayal of the teenagers in it is also very detailed, from being ignorant at first to gradually growing into mature adults who can cope with the Earth's environment. The immature acting skills of the characters actually better reflect this growth process. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.